Welcome to the five of us. We are five outspoken women with close to 150 years of experience as broadcast journalists. We left our jobs on the very same day, and we are dedicated to helping women avoid the many pitfalls common to the workplace. We've heard from hundreds of people recounting tales of woe on the job, and we have done the research. We're putting it all in a book, and we are here to help. I'm Roma Torrey, and along with Kristen Shaughnessy, Janine Ramirez, Vivian Lee, and Amanda Farinacci, we are the five of us. Hi, everyone. You know, as much as we loved our news jobs, there is one really big downside to the business, and that is that the news never sleeps. And I have to say, many a very early morning and a late night, we would get that call to come in because there was some big breaking news story, something major was going on, and we had to get dressed, jump out of bed, and come into work. And when it came to the holidays, it was pretty much the same thing. There's no sacred day in the news business. And I have to say, we're not alone. Obviously, if you're in police work or you're to the fire department or you're a doorman or healthcare, certainly, we all have these days where we have to work on holidays, and it's really not fun, at least from my perspective. So we're going to talk in this episode about working during the holidays and all the weirdness, the depression, the resentments that can build, the insecurities, and the general unhappiness that, that probably greets a lot of people when they're told you have to work on Christmas or New Year's or Thanksgiving, when all we really want to do is spend these very precious days with our family, friends, or significant others. That is, except maybe you, Kristen Shaughnessy, because for whatever the reason, you always seem to pull the short straw. And always I would see on the shift, Kristen's working the holidays. What was that all about? Did you choose this, or was it foisted on you?
No, I mean, I think I just said yes, and I was an easy yes. So they didn't have to, because we all talked about how we were raised, right? Like you just said yes to everything, you worked hard, whatever. But it was different because, I grew up, my parents were educators. So there were holidays off and summers. So they didn't really understand at first. When I first went into this, like, you're not going to be there on Thanksgiving or Christmas or whatever it is. And we would make our own holiday. We'd celebrate on a different day or whatever. So, I mean, that's kind of how it started. And I just said yes. I mean, there are advantages to working the holidays. It's a smaller group, and usually you kind of become a second family in a sense, and you're all kind of in the same boat. So you have a good time. It's more relaxed. But, depending on what you're in, I mean, obviously you named all the professions that are 24/7. Those are all high stress jobs, and things can happen it doesn't matter if it's a holiday. They don't know it's a holiday, the news or the health or whatever. The bad part is if you have somebody if management is Monday through Friday, 24 in these 24/7, like at hospitals or, in the police departments or whatever, and they treat holidays like they're Monday through Friday, right? So Easter is never a holiday, but people work on Sunday. So what happens there? And then I'll just give you a quick story. When I first started, I had Thursday, Fridays off, which I was like, oh, that's great. I'm going to have Thanksgiving off. I'm going to actually host Thanksgiving. And like the Tuesday before Thanksgiving, they were like, oh no, it's a holiday schedule. You're working Thanksgiving. I'm like, you're going to tell me the Tuesday before. So Joe, my husband, learned how to cook a turkey very quickly. And I came home and he was basting the turkey, and it worked, but it's a little bit different when you're in those kind of, professions.
Yeah. Well, so much of the whole holiday work experience seems unfair to me, maybe because the policies aren't very well expressed. And I don't know about you, Amanda, but so many times I was called in, as was Kristen, at the last minute. No, you don't get the day off. You have to come in. When we had plans, people were coming over. As Kristen said, she was cooking Thanksgiving dinner. I had to hand it off to my husband or whoever was around, my mother-in-law, to do all of the big job of putting that together at the last minute. It seems unfair, and I don't know if maybe they could do a better job in some businesses anyway. conveying what the policy is on holiday work, because it always seemed to me certain people got the day off and others always had to be the ones to come into work.
Well, it's funny, right? Because the company oftentimes, not just in news, but I think like in any company that you work at, gives the impression that there's some parity, right? Like because they ask you at the beginning of the year, they're like, "Oh, fill out your time off request for the holidays or whatever," like those like stackables where you list your most wanted day off and your least wanted day off or whatever. So like you could potentially start the year, because I think they send them out pretty maybe like September, October, and they say like what's your preference? What's your pecking order? And, you sit there and you're like, oh, I think, and you're hopeful that the thing you put for number one is the thing you're going to get. And sometimes it doesn't work out that way and it stinks. I will say, like, I like Kristen was a person who I volunteered sometimes, working certain holidays. And I even did that in my first job. I worked at the Gap, for like 4 years, and Black Friday was like a huge thing. So like Thanksgiving, obviously I'm older now, but like back then nobody really shopped on Thanksgiving. But like you think about those kinds of things, right? Like when everyone's out enjoying their families and they're going to like Macy's or, enjoying sights and sounds, there are retail workers who are also doing it too. I think that what's frustrating about it, to your point, Roma, is that nobody's extremely clear about what goes on. So let's all imagine that the five of us put our little form in and we're like, yay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like who's deciding and based on what I'm going to work or you're going to work? And the problem, like Kristen says, is like, once you become a yes person, you're just now on that list of not being a person who's going to give anybody any shit. So you're like, you might internally, like I remember somebody used to say to me, like, look, you can flip out. And then when I present this to you officially, you're going to say yes. People used to say that to me. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to go call whoever and be like, I can't believe this is happening to me. And then I would be like, all right, I'll do it. And it's fine. But, that's part of it. Like to Kristen's point, that's kind of how I was raised. But it is an actual thing that like, once you become the yes person, because I worked the same with Kristen, I worked weekends. So like, and I didn't have kids for a long time. So like, it was almost like, and you see this comes through with the holidays and stuff, right? Like my stuff wasn't as important because I didn't have 9 people at my house. I just had me, but I had plans. I still had a family, an extended family. So it's just a tough, I think that companies need to do a better job of explaining why they're giving certain people certain schedules. I think if you're a worker, you should, and you're going to have your choice, or that it's inevitable you're going to work, try to pick the shift that will work for you. That's what I used to do. I used to say, I'll do anything as long as I'm in first. Tell me, I would come in at 2:00 in the morning. I would come in at 5:00 in the morning, whatever, just so that I knew I could enjoy some form of the day. That was what made it easy for me to survive those things. But it's hard. I'd be lying if I said there are benefits, but there are a lot of unpleasantries, I think, as well, that make things frustrating, especially when you like have friends and family who are just kind of relaxing and you're like, oh God, I'm going to work.
Yeah. Well, I was talking about the unfair scheduling. I worked at one place where it was the people who got the preferential treatment were those who had the seniority, regardless of what the holiday meant to them. So very devout Catholics had to work Christmas if they were newer on the job than the Jewish staffers. And it always seemed unfair to me that, and I was one of them that I had to work, and a bunch of Jewish guys got the day off, and that didn't seem right. But I think the best bosses are the ones who are willing to come in if they're short-staffed and they have to fill a position. And I do know that, Janine, one way to build morale during the holidays is that Christmas party or the holiday party that inevitably involves some kind of weirdness, and you find your colleagues letting their hair down all of a sudden, and you don't even want to know if you don't want to see them with their hair down, because there's a lot of weird behavior that takes place. Did you sense that?
Well, yeah. Well, sometimes, companies put together an annual holiday party and you have to decide, am I going to go? Am I not going to go? What are the consequences if I don't go? Do I have something better to do that night than hang around with coworkers, some of whom I don't even talk to in the office? And then I'm forced to talk to them at the party. I think that, companies, some companies actually make employees pay for their own holiday party. So that's another thing. So it's nice if, they're going to invite you and say, hey, free food and an open bar. But some companies actually have to, tell their employees, here's our holiday party and here's how much it's going to cost you to go. So I think in those situations, you're going to have to decide, is it worth your while, right? Are you going to get face time with some important people you think that might help you in your career? Or do you enjoy your coworkers enough that you go? I used to go to my company parties because one, I enjoyed some of my coworkers, and two, I was always like a team player, right? So it was just like, it's a good as the team to show up and be with, with my coworkers. So I did, but, mixing personal and professional sometimes is not a good idea. And then to let your hair down, not a good idea sometimes, open bar, maybe not the best choice, drinking excessively, maybe the flirting with the colleagues stuff that goes on, maybe not such a good idea either. So there's like a lot of, funny business that goes on at some of these holiday parties. A lot of
misbehavior. Actually, Vivian, I remember we were at one holiday party together and the two of us went off and played a game of pool. Do you remember that? we weren't really interested in, the
right. Everybody else was, there was some kind of game going on. There was some debauchery. And I remember we just wanted to shoot some stick. And it felt good to be able to do that. And I remember the very first holiday party I did, it came after a round of layoffs. So it was a very depressing holiday party. And then shortly after that, I landed in New York, and I remember the first holiday party I went to there was it was epic in terms of the food spread, where it took place, the Rainbow Room at 30 Rock. It was just, I saw people there that I hadn't worked with, but had heard about. I knew about their legendary careers, and I saw them kind of acting inappropriately. And it seems to be that everybody that I've talked to about the holiday party has some story to share. They're like, oh my God. I don't know if it's the era of it, but in the 90s, I remember working for a television station, and there had been rumors that in years prior, the holiday party featured a bowl of condoms at the door. God. And I remember I was getting ready for this party thinking, is it because, this was a time when everybody was sensitive about AIDS and sexually transmitted diseases. It was the 90s. And I remember thinking, is that what I'm going to see? I didn't that year, but everybody had talked about it, and everybody was still talking about where did the bowl of condoms go? And I would love to know what the thought process was of the people who decided we're going to do that. Because what does that say? Meanwhile, fast forward to 2022, everybody's talking about what is the holiday party going to look like this year, with some in-person working having resumed. HR departments are under pressure to try and keep morale up because, let's face it, workplaces have not been the happiest places this year. And there are articles out there that warn people, these are the top 5 behaviors that will get you fired in 2022. So don't do it. And they all are connected to overconsumption of alcohol and or drugs, and just saying or doing the wrong thing with the wrong person. And also not realizing that your company holiday party may also include clients, contractors, not just your coworkers. And that people have to be pretty nuanced and mature enough to understand what the difference is if they're going to a party of just their colleagues and they're going to a party that includes outsiders as well. I remember for the longest time, spouses, girlfriends, boyfriends, or significant others were absolutely not allowed at a newsroom company party. And I guess there was a reason for that. But I would love to hear what you all say about what that reasoning would be. Is it just to keep things within the family.
That's probably cheap.
Money, right, saving money. Never
Yeah.
saving money. Yeah.
And you're not keeping anything in, because I can tell you, as someone who didn't go to all the holiday parties, because I was normally working the next day, you heard everything.
You heard
Starting at like
everything.
the person who came back to the workplace at 3 a.m. to tell you who was doing what at the holiday party. We knew more stuff than anybody. And sometimes the person they were talking about would then work later in the day. And if they were trying to like make out with people at the party or whatever, we knew it all. Like, you can't keep secrets. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And it's,
certain
you know, what's funny,
industries-
you're saying about like, it's the overconsumption of alcohol. And at the same time, like, I remember hearing stories about like a holiday party where there was an open bar and no food. Right. So like,
Recipe for disaster.
what are you
Totally.
expecting is going to happen? People are
Yes,
going to get
of course.
ossified. They're going to say absurd stuff. They're going to totally like show their peacock feathers or whatever the expression is. And it's going to get ugly. It's just going to get ugly. It is. And it's also just at the end of the year. How many shits do people give between Thanksgiving and Christmas, or Thanksgiving and New Year's? You just don't care. Right. So I don't know. I have a friend who went to a holiday party and wound up telling off her boss, like in like such phenomenal fashion when she was drunk. And the next day or whatever it was, the Monday or whatever, went to work, and like she had kind of heard stories because she didn't remember. She got really drunk, and she had kind of heard stories, and her boss kind of gave her like the cold shoulder, and she was just like, dude. And then I guess, you know, they worked it out, whatever. They were sort of friendly. But I mean, it's like, you know, it's a cautionary tale. It's like, you go to these parties, you know, if you're going to drink, if you choose to do that, right? Like, it's the atmosphere for, this guy pisses me off, I'm having a drink, or this person is annoying, I'm having a drink, or I'm going to have a good time, you know, like that atmosphere fosters overconsumption, and it can really be a detriment.
I think in some industries, they probably shouldn't have a holiday party. I mean, there are industries that don't do anything, like you said, Amanda, between Thanksgiving and the end of the year, right? It's a skeleton crew, a skeleton staff at the office. Nobody's making any kind of real deal between companies, you know, outside of the office. And so, and a lot of employees also have a use or lose policy, right? Vacation policy or sick time or whatever, you know, it is that you accumulate, that you have to use it by the end of the year. So a lot of people just take the last 2 weeks off of the year anyway, if they can, in those kind of industries where there is not a 24/7 kind of work ethic. So I think that a company probably better off let them have the last 2 weeks off, spend time with their family, rather than put money into this holiday party. And, you know, like with all this, you know, people don't even want to go, and they'd rather just take the time off at the end of the year where nothing's getting done anyway.
Well, I mean, that works for the folks who are in companies that can afford to take, you know, the 2 weeks off. But, you know, I had read somewhere that young people are really not all that eager to attend holiday parties anymore. And, you know, maybe part of it is lately because of COVID and our remote status. They've never really had a chance to socialize with their fellow workers and don't care to know them any better than on a professional basis. So I don't know, maybe the holiday party is going to be a thing of the past. It's hard to say.
I've heard a little, Roman, really quickly. I heard a little caveat to that, is that I know younger workers that I've spoken to will go to the company party for like an hour, and then they've said, okay, I've had enough, and then they go and do their own thing, like with their little group, where there's not a manager who's watching, or an HR or something, where they can say that they feel like, to, you know, Janine's point, I'm part of the team, I showed up, here I am, whatever, and then go and do their own thing with like the people of their choosing, without feeling so much pressure. Because I think people can feel pressure going to those kinds of situations.
Well, right. I mean, it's just funny, though, as you were saying, they serve alcohol but no food. Like, what do they expect is going to happen?
Right.
I mean, maybe
it was done on purpose.
Yeah, I was going to say, maybe it is. Maybe they really want to, you know, learn a little bit more about their employees that the employees weren't willing to share.
They want to see who's disciplined.
There are ways to combat that. I mean, if you can just look up like how to drink responsibly, and you'll see a bunch of tips that are out there that actually really make sense.
You really need to read those tips. I mean,
yeah, actually I did at one point. Because it became really clear that the pressure, I succumbed to the pressure so badly one year. A coworker who I trusted supremely took me home, made sure that I was okay, like in bed. I remember waking up the next morning thinking, what a horrible, horrible place to have put myself. And how lucky was I that there was somebody that I trusted that I could hand my apartment key to, and that person got me inside and tucked away and checked in on me the next day. But it's horrifying how easy it is to think in your 20s, in your 30s, that you've got control of this. There are tips out there on how to do it properly, including taking a shot of olive oil to coat your stomach.
Whoa, there's
I never
friend
heard
of
of that one
ours.
before.
if
friend of
nobody
ours told a
learned
story about how
another
she had an
thing
intern.
about this whole episode, it's taking a shot of olive oil to curb your potential for getting drunk. That's pretty good.
Well, it just kind of, it coats the stomach, and the rate of absorption is just slowed down a little bit. But I mean, if you know absolutely that you're not going to be able to eat before you hit the party, like just try and down some kind of cooking oil and then go. You have to get your hands on the cooking oil first.
Thank you. That was really helpful there, Vivian. But getting back to actually working on a holiday, I think you sort of touched on a little bit, Kristen. There are some advantages. You get to work without really people looking over your shoulder. You can pretty much do your own thing. And if it's an easy day, you can almost phone it in when you show up. You get the day off, you get a comp day off, or you get overtime pay, right? Mm-hmm. And then you get the brownie points for, being a good soldier and, being willing to work on a day when nobody else does.
Yeah. But if you think about it too, like we're talking about the professions, emergency services, hospitality, where waiters and waitresses have to deal with bartenders, have to deal with the public, right? Who want things a certain way on a holiday. Just healthcare, obviously, there's emergencies all the time. So you can think it's going to be relaxed, but I think the bosses and the companies have to realize that a lot of times it's not. It's just kind of, it's a regular day in a lot of ways. And I think they have to account for that. I sometimes think that people who work holidays and people who work weekends are completely underappreciated. Yeah. And I think that's a fair point, that employers really should think about that. And the other thing is, if you work all the holidays and everybody comes back, say it's, this kind of holiday, Christmas and Hanukkah, people come back on January 1st and they're like, yeah, let's go. And you're like, I'm exhausted working, so there has to be some recognition of that as well.
Yeah. To put a point on that, there was one holiday when we had a little bit of an accident, and a glass bowl that I had received for my wedding fell off a shelf and sliced my arm, and I was like bleeding all over the place. So I had to leave the family celebration and go to the hospital. And I have to say, the hospital workers could not have been more accommodating, more compassionate, thoughtful. And, I never sensed for a minute that they were forced to work on a day that, everybody else got off. So I tip my hat to those folks. I also want to mention that the United States falls really, really short when it comes to holidays and days off. And a chart came to my attention while I was, looking up some information about this discussion. And what I found is that America has, among economically developed countries, by far the least amount of guaranteed vacation days off. In fact, America has no guaranteed vacation days off. We have holidays, we have 10 holidays, but that is it. And then you have to compare that to Austria has 38 guaranteed days off. That's a combination of holidays and vacation days. The UK has 28 days off. That's holidays and vacation days off. All that America has, the United States has, is 10 holidays off, guaranteed. And when you think about it, I mean, a lot of times, companies will be a little bit more generous and offer vacation days. But in actuality, according to this chart that was put out by Statista, 1 in 4 Americans are not guaranteed any vacation days off. Isn't that just outrageous? That really is a problem in this country. And you can understand when you're forced to work a holiday and it's one of only 10 days that you're given. It really does. It seems so unfair. And it adds to the whole depression aspect of coming into work when, you look around and you think, why was I the one chosen? Why did I get that short straw and I have to come in and work? And it kind of makes you feel like maybe they don't like you as much, or, there are feelings of insecurity that might follow. Did that?
Oh my God, Roma, you just reminded me of this story that I heard from somebody once who put in their timesheet and she didn't put in she didn't put in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. She just said, I'm not working. I'm not working. I'm not working.
How far did she get with that?
No way, Jose. Like, wrote the craziest things on the sheet. But I suspect that what happened was it was a culmination of like, not everybody is like St. Kristen. People get pissed off and they don't want to keep saying yes and getting forced to.
Yeah, don't be me.
Right? Like,
something
right?
I've learned in retrospect.
Yeah. I feel like I was kind of like you. And then I was, at some point, I was like, I can't do this anymore. I'm not doing this anymore. You have to like take a stand. And I think that was her stand. But when you said that, I was thinking, oh my God, I remember hearing that and like almost crying because I couldn't believe the audacity, but also how excited I was that like, it was like, oh my, don't even think about it. No way I'm working. Ask someone else. Not available.
Advice? You guys have any advice for people who feel like they're the ones that keep getting called in time and time again on these valuable holidays?
I think if you land at a place that you think you're going to hang out at for some time, count on having to step up and take over the unwanted shifts, work on a holiday for about a year.
Yeah.
And then start to keep track of when you're asked to fill in, when you're asked to pinch hit, when you're asked to cover another holiday. Once you get past your second and third year, there's a certain amount of clout, depending on what your relationship is with your boss, but keep records. Because I remember after the 5th or 6th year of working a Christmas, I realized I can't keep doing this because I had family that I needed to travel very far to go see, and they were starting to wonder, like, what is going on? Is it that you don't want to come? And I was putting work first every time I said yes to a pinch hitter question, right? Maybe it's just about like being smart about understanding your worth the minute you walk into a new job and start keeping records.
Mm-hmm. And some people may want to volunteer. Like, why don't you get the volunteers first, right? There may be people out there who say, like, you know what, my family's not in town, I'll work anyway. Or, I'm like, work is a good distraction for me. Oh, I could use the overtime money. Oh, I could use the comp day off. I could use it at a different time. Like, why don't you tap into those people first? Because there are some people who actually, don't mind working on a holiday, and it might be good for them before you start making people who really have plans, give up whatever plans they have to get in there.
On that note, Janine, it's people who are single, right? They say that they feel like they get the short stick a lot because they don't have families. They still deserve a holiday, right? So I think employers also have to be conscious of that. Just because you have a family, that doesn't guarantee you a day off. That's not really fair to your coworkers if they're single. And I just wanted to point out, when I first started working, I was a bartender and I worked in radio. So there was no such thing as a holiday. And when I look at my daughter, she works for a founder-owned company, and there'll be sometimes it'll be just before Thanksgiving, and he'll say, you know what, you guys have worked really hard. We're just going to take, 2 days off before Thanksgiving. And I think it goes a long way toward morale. If you don't, if you're not one of those 24/7 professions, during Christmas, they get the week off, and it just helps people make travel plans. It makes everything just a little less stressful. And I think then they feel very loyal to the founder of the company, and they really will work hard and, do the best when they're there for him. So.
Well, you know what, Kristen, let's hope that's the future of the workplace in America, because we really fall way short compared to all of the other developed nations. So, I always end with a quotation. So for all of you folks who feel sorry for yourselves when you're forced to work on a holiday, consider what it would be like in the service and you're on military duty, right? So I'm going to put up this image that I found here, and it goes, "Hey, you people," and you see soldiers. Tell me again how working on public holidays is ruining you. I mean, it is just 1 day or 2 days, it could be so much worse. So to all you folks who have been following us since we launched a couple of months ago, just want to say thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We really appreciate your support, and we want to just tell you we're going to be back next year. You'll see us in the new year, and we've got some fun surprises for you, and we're getting bigger and better. Thanks for your patience as we kind of work out the kinks in the podcast. And we wish you all, whether you're working or not, a very, very happy, joyous holiday and a healthy and prosperous and happy new year. So for all of us, thanks again for watching and listening, and we'll be back for sure. Take care. Thanks for tuning in to The Five of Us. We want to hear from you with any questions, ideas, or suggestions for future discussions. Just write to us at the email you see here, and we will be eager to help. Talk to you next time.